This lecture on Social Security is designed for people who have studied economics, finance, or accounting at the university level. The presentation is, I'm going to give you a link. It's going to be provided in Google Docs. I'll give you a link in the description in YouTube. All of the information that I'm referring to in this presentation is from an authoritative source. I'll give you a link in the notes section of the Google Docs presentation. So the title of the lecture is that Social Security is not an entitlement. Both President Obama and Speaker Boehner constantly refer to it as an entitlement, and I like to think of it as an entitlement as talking about a spoiled child who believes that he is entitled to a birthday party with a clown and a pony. That's not what Social Security is. It never was that. So it's very disturbing that the political parties both would buy into this mischaracterization. I have on the picture of our lecture, the first slide is a picture of young Teddy Roosevelt. We'll talk about him later, but he's the father of Social Security. He did a lot of other great things for our country. If you enjoy national parks, you can thank Teddy Roosevelt because he strongly believed that the land was part of our birthright and it was something we should save for future generations. So he fought for worker rights. I'm fighting for worker rights right now, and I'm asking you to enlist in this fight for worker rights for future Americans. So let's first start talking about work life, because a person born today has an expected life of nearly 80 years, 78.7 years, and you can find that in Google if you just type in U.S. life expectancy. But not all of that time are you going to be able to work and produce more than you are consuming. Before age 20, you're going to need to be studying. After age 65, I hope you have something better to do. I hope you can enjoy your retirement. I've got a couple of pictures here. Here's a child who's working. This is not what we want as our country. Remember our friend Teddy Roosevelt? He fought very hard against child labor, and there were a lot of politicians who fought against him. It seems silly now, but it's definitely wrong to have children working. That's the same as slavery. And we need children learning so they can become knowledge workers and help grow the economy. Same with old folks, which I'm getting close to becoming. We don't want them to have to work until they drop dead. Here's a picture of a nice lady who's 100 years old and is still working as a Walmart greeter. If that's her choice, great. But if she has to do that in order to feed herself, that isn't a country that we want to live in. You could say, well, the families should be providing for this little guy. But that isn't really the philosophy that America is built on. America is built on all people are created equal. And whether you're born to a rich family or a poor family, we should have the same chance at life. So let's talk a tad about the history of Social Security. And as I mentioned before, Teddy Roosevelt fought for the program back in 1912 when he launched his Bull Moose Progressive Party. It didn't become law until his cousin enacted it in 1935. All workers pay nearly 15% of their gross wages up to a wage limit. Right now it's about $106,000. Half of this is contributed by the worker and the other half is paid by the employer. But if you want to think of this, all of this money is earned by workers. Not $1 would go into Social Security Fund unless it was paid by workers and earned by workers. So it was never designed to be an actuarial sound pension plan, defined benefit pension plan. In fact, I put a link in the speaker notes to FAS 112, which is the accounting for defined benefit pension plans. That didn't even become law until the 1990s, or accounting law until the 1990s. Before that, companies used pay-as-you-go, which is kind of how Social Security is formed. But it was never going to be a defined benefit pension plan. In fact, we can say with certainty that if it had ever had to meet those constraints, then we would have never had a Social Security program. Most of the industrialized world has some sort of Social Security program in place now. So if we were going to account for Social Security contributions under GAAP, not defined benefit pension accounting, just regular GAAP accounting for unearned revenue, the money that comes into the program, that the government receives the cash, and it establishes a liability. So every time they withhold money from your wages from the time you were 16 years old on, you paid this money into the government, they owe you a future benefit. And we can call this a benefit or a promise, a contract with American workers. And this $13.8 trillion I've got a link into the Social Security Administration website. This is the amount of funds that have been paid into Social Security over the last 35 years. The $11.3 trillion, when this represents the monies that were paid out to workers over the last 75 years. So here's a reduction of cash, and here's a reduction of the liability to American workers. So there's still a large liability to American workers of monies that have been paid in a contract between American workers and the Social Security program or the government or society. I want to concentrate on these numbers for just a second. The 13.8 trillion and the 11.3 trillion. This 13.8 trillion was collected from hundreds of millions of workers over 75 years. And this 11.3 trillion was paid out to hundreds of millions of workers over 75 years. Most of this is in very small checks, $500 checks a month. The average Social Security benefit is around roughly $1,000 a month. These are small sums of money. It's very important, but nobody is getting rich off of Social Security. That isn't how the program is designed. But there's still a large liability that the country has to its workers. And this is not a theoretical one. This is money that was paid in. It's a contract that all workers have undertaken. And the flip side, it's money that the government owes. So it is not a costly burden to society. You'll hear all political parties saying that we can't afford this. Well, that isn't true. It isn't something that you afford. It's part of the framework of society. We cannot all work. If you recall the work life, we can't all work forever, and we can't work when we're children. We need some kind of system in place where we don't have to work when we're children, and we don't have to work when we're old. The Center on Budget Policies and Policy Priorities, and I've given you their link. This is last year they estimated that 20 million Americans today would be poor if not for Social Security benefits. This isn't some handout, government handout, for sad people who have a sad story. These are workers who have earned benefits, and the government owed this money, every single penny of it. And if this money was not paid, 20 million people in this country, including 1.1 million children, would be living in poverty. The evidence shows that it does not that the Social Security program supports the individual, allows people to reach greater heights. They can get educated. They can become a knowledge worker. They can grow the economy. They don't have to be a child slave at age 5. They don't have to work until they drop over dead. It does not cost the government money. It improves wealth creation. It makes us all wealthier by having this program. So what are the politicians trying to do? They're trying to reduce this liability. Right now that we saw that there is a contract with the American workers and the government owes money. They're trying to reduce it. We don't know how much yet, but it's going to be a lot of money, and it's going to be a reduction of the funds that are owed to workers. So the liability is going to go down if you think in accounting parlance. And then the government is going to have a gain for whatever its broken promise is to the American worker. So who's going to get that gain? We know it isn't going to be the workers. The workers are going to suffer. The people will suffer. Bob Ivory of Bloomberg, and this is not some left-wing publication, obviously. I have a link to an interview with him on PBS. But this is unrelated, kind of, but he estimated that the bank bailout was $13 trillion. And this happened over less than a year. It wasn't democratic. It wasn't voted on. This is a result of Federal Reserve open market operations, the nationalization of the GSEs, basically government giving money to a few thousand people who benefited spectacularly. That's more than 75 years of Social Security payments in checks, of less than $1,000 to hundreds of millions of workers. That's just wrong, and that's just sick, and that is going to destroy our society. The fact that within 12 months, a few thousand people get more money than is paid out to hundreds of millions of people over 75 years of the Social Security program. Why did that happen? Well, I've got a link also in here to the G20 Seoul Summit that took place in November of 2010. Tim Geithner attended that. He's one of President Obama's most trusted advisors. This isn't a secret document. You can read it for yourself. I give you the link. The G20, as a group, said that we need to reduce benefits paid to workers. They didn't say it in those words. There's a little bit of code wording going on. But they're talking about limiting government expenditures on things that help people, with like public education, health care. This isn't a secret, and all of the industrialized countries are doing it. This is something that's happening all throughout the world. You see people in Greece protesting. This is why, because the monies that are paid into the government, whether that government is in Europe, Asia, or the U.S., and it's owed to workers and it's owed to people, the governments are looking to have a big gain by cutting that liability. And who's going to get that money? Well, we know that the bankers got a lot of money. Is it connected? I'll let you make the connection there. So what I'm asking you is not to fall for this big kabuki theater. You have President Obama saying, "Oh well, I'm going to fight for the workers, but we know that we have to cut these expensive entitlements," and the Speaker Boehner and the Republicans are saying, "Oh no, we need deeper cuts." At the end of the day, the U.S. is not going to fault, in my opinion. If it does, it'll be short. But this is all just a big play, because we know with the G20 leaders' declaration from Seoul last year that the plan is to cut liabilities that are owed to the citizens and workers of all countries. So just like kabuki theater, it's kind of the pro wrestling from ancient Japan, with big actions. Don't fall for the WWE, the pro wrestling, or the kabuki theater. We need to hold all of our leaders' feet to the fire, that they will not cut the benefits that are owed to American workers today and the American workers of the future. So thank you all. Hope you will join this fight for worker rights, and keep up the good fight.